Hello, my beautiful midlife queens. Welcome once again to the Midlife Reinvention Queen podcast. I'm your host, Lorena Vasolo, the Midlife Reinvention Queen. And this is Midlife, unfiltered, unhinged, and unapologetic. This is a space where we unhook ourselves from the BS, outdated narratives of what women in midlife should or shouldn't do and how we should live our midlife and beyond. Here we crown ourselves and we step into our most beautiful, bold, and unapologetic midlife and beyond. Here we step into our midlife queen era. Let's get started. And today's episode is Breaking the Midlife Rules. We're going to be diving deep into the topic of aging gracefully and what that actually means and what that might look like for us women, modern women in midlife and beyond. So let's dive in. This is something that I've been thinking a lot about This is a topic that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and it's something that's been sitting with me, especially as I move deeper into my midlife. I'm 52 years old, and also having a 14-year-old daughter who is also navigating her own journey of womanhood. And I want to dive into this idea of aging gracefully, because everyone loves to say this phrase, right? We've seen it. You've seen it a lot. Oh, she's aging gracefully. But what does that even mean anymore for you and me, for women, for modern women? And who decides what grace looks like, what gracefully truly means? And for me, that question, and from my own reflection and exploration, from my own, and for me, what I've discovered is that the question isn't exactly how do I age gracefully or how do we age gracefully. It's who are we being when we are aging? Who am I being? And who are we being as we are aging? And when I think about aging, I also can't help think about my grandmothers. And when I think about aging, I can't help but think and reflect on my grandmothers. My grandmother Orieta from my dad's side and my grandmother Hilda from my mother's side. They were both from Argentina, daughters of Italian immigrants. I grew up in Argentina. I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, as many of you may know. And I was surrounded by my grandmothers, my aunts, and women just like them. Strong, devoted, self-sacrificing women who carried entire families on their backs. And they didn't really talk about self-care or about aging or about boundaries or nervous system regulation or reinvention or self-love, self-worth, all of these things that we talk about, personal development, purpose, pleasure, passion, etc., that us modern women talk about. And these worlds didn't really exist. And those words didn't even exist in their world. And if they did, they never really talked about it. And what I do recall is that they did embody something that I think we've lost touch with. And it's a natural acceptance of aging. I do remember seeing my grandmothers aging naturally, aging with, they didn't really fight aging and they didn't really hide from it, right? They had wrinkles in their faces, they had sunspots, they had gray hair. One of my grandmothers had gray hair and she let her gray hair and Hilda. And then my other grandmother, my grandmother Orieta, she was more, she liked to kind of colored hair a little bit lighter, and kind of blended in with her grays. And she was more into putting on makeup and a little more glamorous. I'm like my grandmother Orieta. I've always liked to glam myself and play with makeup ever since I was a little girl. And what I recall from both of my grandmothers is that they didn't focus on their aging, and they didn't see it as something to resist or to fix or to change. They just aged and they let time mark their faces, and their stories lived in their faces, in their eyes, and their hands told decades of work, of nurturing, of service, of love, of life, right? I remember my grandmother's hands just filled with wrinkles and sunspots. And I never once looked at them and thought, oh, she should look younger, right? It just naturally, they looked like the way a grandmother was supposed to look to me. I don't know. And they never questioned their worth as they grew older, because in their time, this conversation wasn't really as predominant as it is for us modern women. And so this is something that I've been sitting with and thinking about, right? And it's something that was kind of beautiful about my grandmothers. And maybe you can recall your grandmothers and grandmothers before, right? There wasn't this push and pressure as much as we have today in our modern society and for our generation to normalize this normalizing of, if you're 50, 60, or 70, you can look like you're still 25 or you're still 35. And it's kind of becoming more and more normalized, right? That it's almost, that it's optional not to look like you're aging, right? There's this normalization and this idea that we don't age as women, right? That we have to look forever 21, forever 25, or forever 35, when we're well into our 50s or 60s or 70s. And, going back to my grandmothers, I really admired that grace that they had with their aging. And I also see that there was a cost to their quiet acceptance of everything, including their aging, right? Because beneath that quiet acceptance, there was also a lot of quiet repression, right? From that generation. There was no space for rage or for dreams or for desire or for pleasure or for self-care or self-prioritizing themselves, right? They were strong, but silenced and repressed. And there was a lot of self-sacrifice and self-abandonment. So, both there's pros and cons, but as I reflected on how they aged, I did admire how they embraced their aging process as part of a natural process of life and a natural journey in their womanhood. And that is appealing to me. And of course, I want to preface all of this before I continue by saying that I believe that each of us are sovereign women who make our own decisions about our bodies, about ourselves, about everything, how we look, how we dress, how we think, of course. And this isn't a conversation about sovereignty, right? I believe that it's our inherent right as women to be sovereign. We are sovereign beings, and we have the absolute right to exercise our sovereignty. So there is no right or wrong, and there is no judgment. And, whether you choose to age one way or the other, there is no right and wrong. And I want to be really clear. The conversation here today that I'm opening up is about reflecting on why we choose to do the things that we do to our bodies when it comes to aging and beauty and the standards, and why we choose to have certain procedures that alter our appearance. Why are we choosing that? So that is the conversation, because while I believe in sovereignty, and I believe that every single one of us can choose to do whatever you want to your body, I also believe that true sovereignty comes when we are choosing for ourselves from a place of love and freedom, and not from a place of fear or feeling inadequate or feeling pressure. We'll dive a bit deeper into that. But going back to our grandmothers, and as I was saying, that they were very strong women who carried their families and the world on their shoulders, but they didn't have space for, and they were women who embraced their aging process in a different way, because also there wasn't the same access to all the treatments and procedures that we have nowadays. And there wasn't this push and this normalization that it's super accessible. And, women start having procedures early as in sometimes in their teens and 20s. And then, so there's such normalized access to cosmetic procedures to alter your appearance as a woman, and this push and this pressure to remain wrinkle-free and forever young, and that this is put on a pedestal like a very important thing for us to focus on. And I think it's too much for me, for my preference. I think that as women, we can be, and I think it can be very dangerous, especially if this is being modeled by us, the older, wiser women, and we're modeling for the younger teens and younger girls and younger women that this is normal, that this is how we look now in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. We are normalizing that we are not allowed to look older. We're not allowed to wrinkle. We're not allowed to age in a certain way. And yes, we all want to look good and healthy. But there's a balance between wanting to look healthy and beautiful and feel beautiful in your own skin and putting on makeup versus getting really intense cosmetic procedures or cosmetic surgery to alter your appearance and to make your face look like it's 10, 15, 20 years younger than your age. So anyways, and these are things that, a lot of our grandmothers didn't really even think about, right? It wasn't in their radar, and it wasn't as normalized, as available, and as popular as it has become. And that's why I was thinking about, our grandmothers and what a difference it is for us women in midlife now, and how we are looking at and how we are seeing the field of aging, and what aging gracefully means. And it's really about redefining what is your own definition of aging gracefully. And so going back to our grandmothers, I admire that they had this grace to age and get old more naturally. And they also had this quiet acceptance. And as I was saying before, I also see that there was a cost to this quiet acceptance, because they were there was a quiet repression. There was no space for rage or for their dreams or their desires or their pleasure. They were strong but silenced, and they loved deeply and they gave of themselves, but many of them didn't know how to love themselves. And fast forward to us, women of midlife today, and we're living in an entirely different landscape. We are the most informed generation of women in history. We have tools, language, access, opportunity. We have power. We can reimagine ourselves, reimagine our careers. We can reinvent our lives after divorce, after motherhood, after loss, after transitions. We can fall in love again with ourselves, with our life, with someone new. We can build empires. We can do it all, right? And we can choose how we look and how we live and how we age. We have choices that a lot of our grandmothers or great grandmothers didn't have. And that's the beauty of this era, that we have the sovereignty of choice. But here's the paradox. While we've gained so much power, we're also living under more pressure than ever before. So when I think about aging, I can't help but think of my grandmothers, my grandmother Orietta and my grandmother Hilda. They were both born in Argentina, daughters of Italian immigrants. I was born in Argentina, and I grew up in Argentina surrounded by women like them. They were strong, devoted women who carried their entire families on their backs. They didn't talk about self-care ever. I've not once heard either of my grandmothers or great grandmothers or my aunts ever talk about self-care. I never even heard my mom talk about that when I was growing up. And they didn't talk about boundaries or nervous system regulation or reinvention or self-love or self-worth or empowerment. Those words never existed in their world. They weren't really part of their vocabulary. But they did embody something that I think we've lost touch with a little bit. And that is a quiet acceptance. And this is what I mean by that. They didn't fight aging. They didn't hide from it. They didn't see it as something to resist or fix. They just aged. They let time mark their faces, and their stories lived in their eyes and in their hands. Their hands told decades of work and nurturing and service and love and experience. And I remember my grandmother's hands, and they were full of wrinkles and sunspots at one point. And, not once did they question their worth as they grew older because of their age. And not once do I remember looking at them and feeling like there was something wrong with them because they were aging and they had wrinkles and gray hairs. And, my grandma Hilda, she let her full on gray hair go and show. And my grandmother Orietta, I used to color some of her hair and get highlights to kind of make it to blend in her grays. And she was more glamorous and she liked to put on makeup and stuff. My grandma Hilda was much, she wasn't into that as much. I'm like my grandmother Orietta. Ever since I was a little girl, I used to go to her bathroom and she had all her lipsticks lined up. And she had one that was gold and it was red. And I used to put on this red lipstick. And I remember just being a little girl and going to her bathroom and grabbing her lipsticks and loving it. I've always liked makeup and glamming up and playing around with dressing up. And for me, that's a playful self-expression thing. But that's the thing, right? One grandma was not glamorous. The other grandma was glamorous, but either of them ever got cosmetic procedures or cosmetic surgery or any kind of treatment or procedure to make their appearance different because they wanted to look younger. And here's the thing. Before I go on, I want to be very clear. There is zero judgment here, whether you choose to get a filler or get cosmetic surgery or get Botox or get a facelift or whatever it is that you choose to do for your own body, right? As a woman, we are sovereign beings. You can choose what you do, and there's no right and wrong. There is whatever is right for you. But this conversation today is about why, as women, especially as modern women, we feel more pressure than ever before to not age gracefully, but rather to not age. There seems to be this pressure and this normalization that women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s and beyond now look like women who are 25 or 35, right? There's this normalization of completely changing your face and having no wrinkles and having everything look like you're still forever 21. And so this is my question, right? Why are we pursuing that as modern women, right? Where's that coming from, right? And so my question is, are we truly being sovereign and exercising our freedom and our power of choice because it's something that we choose to do for ourselves because we love ourselves? Or are we choosing to do these things, do these procedures, and spend all this money and time and energy doing all these things to our faces because we feel that we lose our worth, our value, because we feel pressured into looking young forever from society, from the beauty standards, right? Where is that coming from? And that's the question that I think is important to ask ourselves. So going back to our grandmothers and my grandmothers and how they had this quiet acceptance of their aging process. I also want to say that, there was a lot for these women, this generation, there was a lot of quiet repression. And this is something that is common for us women, right? There was no space for rage or for dreams or for desire or for pleasure or for passion or for prioritizing themselves. They were extremely strong women, but they were also very silenced. And they loved deeply, but a lot of them didn't love themselves enough, and they didn't prioritize themselves enough. And so fast forward to us, women in midlife today, women like you and me, right? Whether you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, beyond, we're living in an entirely different landscape than our mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers. We are the most informed generation of women in the history of humanity. We have tools, language, access, opportunity, information. We have power. We have the ability to reimagine our careers, to reimagine and reinvent ourselves. We can reinvent our lives and start over after divorce, after motherhood, after loss, after transitions. We can build empires. We can do it all, right? We can choose how to look. We can choose how to live. We can choose how to age. That's the beauty of this era, the sovereignty of choice. We have all the choice in the world, but here's the paradox. While we've gained so much power, we're also living under more pressure than ever before. We are the most stressed and burnt out generation of women in the history. And we are living under more pressure to perform a certain way and to look a certain way. And particularly today, I want to focus on we are the generation with the most pressure to look young forever. There's this pressure and normalization, and it's become acceptable that women don't need to age, right? It's kind of optional now. You can get this procedure and do this and do that and get this filler, get this Botox, get this facelift, get this procedure. And you can look forever 21, forever 25, forever 35. And we see it everywhere. We see it in women day to day. We see it in famous women. We see it in women that are icons of empowerment and, and icons of empowerment and female power and artists and whatnot, right? Like you see it in icons like Madonna. And, I've always admired her as an artist and as a very strong, and we see it in strong, independent, powerful women, and yet they are still altering their appearance and getting procedures done to try to keep their faces wrinkle-free, to keep their faces looking as young as possible for as long as possible. And so here's the thing, right? This isn't a criticism. This isn't a judgment. I'm just observing what is happening because it's our reality. It's our generation, right? And I feel also as a woman going through midlife, I feel it too. I see it too. And I'm also modeling for my daughter. I'm very aware of what I'm modeling for my daughter and, what kind of legacy I want to leave. And, and it's not our fault as women that we feel the need and we feel that we have to do all these things to our appearance because, our grandmothers didn't have to scroll through perfectly filtered faces of 50-year-olds who look 30. Our grandmothers didn't have to see anti-aging ads every 2 seconds, reminding them to reverse time, right? They didn't have to live inside this algorithm that profits from their insecurities. We do. We've inherited freedom and a whole new kind of bondage. And we live in a world that says we can have it all. But we also live in a world that says we need to look like we're 25 while we're doing it forever. And that's where I want to pause and go deeper because this isn't a conversation about what's right or wrong. This isn't about judging women for doing Botox or fillers or facelifts or anything. No, this is a conversation about why. Like I said before, why are we making the choices we are making? Are we truly choosing from sovereignty, from self-love, from joy, from self-expression? Or are we reacting and choosing from fear? Fear of invisibility, fear of irrelevance, fear of being left behind, fear of if I don't look a certain way, I won't be valued. I won't be seen anymore. Would we make the same choices? My question is, would we make the same choices if we hadn't been conditioned since girlhood to equate beauty with worth? That's the deeper conversation. That's the real question. And let's be honest, I ask myself that too, right? I have to check in with myself because we all have our sense of, vanity and we all want to look beautiful and sexy and good in our own bodies, in our own skin. And, I've always liked to color my hair. Since I was a teenager, I've colored my hair many different colors. and I still do color my hair and I don't have a whole lot of gray yet. And I don't know what I'll do once I have like a whole bunch of gray, but for me, that part still is like when I put on makeup and stuff, it's always been about fun and self-expression. And I have days where I don't wear any makeup and I have days where I wear more makeup, but my worth and my sense of worthiness does not depend on how my face looks or how my hair looks. And so, but I'm not going to pretend that I don't feel the pressure. But, I'm not going to pretend that I don't feel the pressure. I felt it a lot more as a teen. As a teenager and a young woman, I did have a lot of self-esteem issues when it came to my body and my image. Now, as a 52-and-a-half-year-old, I have done a lot of inner work, and I've unhooked from a lot of the conditioning and the beauty standards and the BS narratives. And, while I myself have chosen not to do anything cosmetic to alter my appearance, I don't have any judgment for women who do. Some of my dear friends choose to, and to each his own. Like I said, this is a deeper conversation about asking why. And that's where the self-inquiry begins. This is my invitation, not judgment, not in judgment, but in curiosity, in asking why. Why am I choosing to do this? Why am I opting for this choice, right? Is this about me feeling beautiful for me, or is it about staying valuable for others? That's the line we're all walking, I believe, as modern women. And as modern, that's the line I believe we're all walking as women in midlife, and women who are aging. And, it is a natural process, right, to age. And yes, we all want to look as best as we can and feel as best as we can and be as strong and healthy and vital as we can for as long as we can. We're all navigating what it means to stay true to ourselves while shedding layers of conditioning that were never ours to begin with. So I get it, right? We have so much pressure. That's why I think it's important because to have these conversations, that's why I believe it's important to have these conversations. Because our grandmothers didn't have our choices. We didn't have, and we don't have their quiet acceptance of aging. And our grandmothers didn't have our choices. We do. We have all of these choices. And so I think maybe what this era calls for is a blend of having acceptance. And from that place of self-acceptance and self-love comes a choice that is rooted in self-love and self-worth. And when we are rooted and anchored in self-love and self-worth and honoring ourselves, and we are not placing our value on anything external or our appearance, our choices are different, and we make choices from that place. When we make choices from that place, our choices are more empowering, our choices feel good, our choices are healthier. And so I think it's really, really good for us women to focus on reclaiming the ease and the dignity that comes with aging and allowing ourselves to. And I think it's a beautiful thing to allow ourselves to age with ease, to allow ourselves to age, to embrace our aging process, not as something to be fixed, but as something to be revered, as a celebration of life, because aging means that we're still alive and that we're still evolving, that we're still living, that we're still becoming. And there's a change, right? We're not meant to be the same person that we were throughout our entire life. We're meant to evolve and to grow and transform. And the same happens with our appearance. We're not meant to look the same way our entire life. We're not meant to always look like we're 15 or 20 or 25 or 35. We're meant to evolve and change and become and transform. And so I truly believe that what I'm learning to embrace now at this stage of my life at 52, almost 53 years old, is the idea of aging with ease and dignity and freedom, and aging with consciousness and self-awareness, aging with self-love, and self-worth at the forefront, and what I like to call sovereign aging. And it's not passive. It's not about giving up and letting go. No, I still like to look good. I still like to do my hair and wear my jewelry and put on my lipstick. But it's about consciously choosing, intentionally choosing what feels true, aligned, and alive for you from a place of self-love, from a place of self-worth that is rooted in that. It's about letting your worth come from within, about letting everything you do on the outside, your hair, everything you do on the outside, your hair, your appearance, whatever you choose to do, how you dress, how you do your hair, your makeup, and whatever else you choose to do to your body, be an expression of that self-worth, be an expression of your self-love, not a replacement of it. We live in a time where, like I said, women, we can be everything. And yet the world still tries to make us feel like we're not enough, not thin enough, not young enough, not sexy enough, not smooth enough, not successful enough, not voluptuous enough, not this, not that. But here's what I know for sure after 52 and a half years on this planet as a woman. Your enoughness was never meant to be measured by the mirror. This has nothing to do with your worth. Your worth doesn't live in your reflection. It lives in your presence, in your essence, in your wisdom, in your laughter, in your soul, in your power, in your heart, in who you are. It lives in who you are. It lives in your insides. That's where your worth comes from. It lives in the choices that you make, in what you bring to those around you. And it lives in the way, it lives in your energy and how you be. That's where your worth comes from. And it's inherent. You were born worthy just by being you. There's nothing you need to do or change or achieve. You are worthy. You are enough. You are more than enough. You are plenty, just as you are. And that is the bottom line. And so that is what we need to anchor in first and foremost. And that's the kind of beauty and worth. And that's the kind of true beauty and worth that never expires, that never ages, that is timeless and infinite. So, yes, let's age gracefully. Let's age with sovereignty. But let's define what grace means to us, modern women in midlife and beyond. Let it mean sovereignty. Let it mean true sovereignty. Let it mean self-awareness. Let it mean freedom. Let it mean truth. Let it mean making choices that come from deep self-respect, not fear. Let it mean embracing the woman we are becoming. Let it mean not clinging. Let it mean embracing the woman we are becoming, not clinging to the one we used to be. Let it mean embracing our age and embracing who we are at this stage of our life. Let it mean, because this version of you, this woman that you are right now, she is not past her prime. You are not past your prime, my beautiful queen. You are in your prime. You are still becoming. You are still evolving. You are the embodiment of every woman who came before you and every woman who will come after you. You are the bridge. You are the powerful bridge between grace and rebellion. And we get to marry those. We get to blend aging gracefully and aging rebelliously. That to me is a really nice definition that really appeals to me. And you get to become the woman, and you get to really And you get to really unhook yourself from, the women who were told to stay small and to stay invisible, and really become and step into your midlife queen era and embrace all that that entails, wrinkles and all. And so, I think for us women in midlife who can have it all and choose it all and be it all, I think it truly comes down to becoming really intentional and making sure that our choices are truly aligned with who we are in our insides, and they're not just a reaction and a reflection of conditioning and influences that's coming from and pressure that's coming from the outside. And staying true to yourself and truly knowing who you are at the core of your being and loving yourself fully. And that to me, and embracing and celebrating who you are and who you are becoming at every stage of your life, no matter what the reflection in the mirror shows. You are worthy and beautiful at every stage of your life, no matter what reflection in the mirror shows. If we can anchor ourselves in that and practice that every single day, that to me means aging gracefully and aging with sovereignty and aging on your own terms. So I really want to invite you, my beautiful midlife queen, to truly give yourself the freedom and the opportunity to truly embrace aging on your own terms. And I want to leave you with that, my beautiful queen, today. If this episode resonated with you, and if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and send it to another midlife queen who you know will appreciate it and would love to listen to it. And please leave me some comments. Let me know what landed for you. What were some of your biggest takeaways? And would love to hear what are your thoughts and feels about what aging gracefully means to you, what aging with sovereignty means to you as a modern woman in midlife and beyond. I would love to know. Thank you so, so much for listening, for being there. And I can't wait to see you in the next episode next week. In the meantime, as I always say, crown on and rock on, my beautiful queens. Love you.